Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella lived in the magnificent Crystal Castle, nestled high among the snow-capped mountains of the Kingdom of Winterhaven. The castle's towers sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun, and magical snowflakes danced in the air year-round, creating a perpetual winter wonderland. On this particular December morning, the two royal siblings were exploring the castle's ancient library when they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Alexander, who was 10 years old with bright blue eyes and golden hair, was reaching for a dusty book about dragon legends when his hand knocked over an ornate silver box hidden behind the volumes. The box tumbled to the floor with a musical chime, and its contents scattered across the marble tiles. Isabella, 8 years old with flowing auburn hair and emerald green eyes, gasped as she saw what had spilled out. Dozens of candy canes lay before them, but these were unlike any candy canes they had ever seen. These candy canes glowed with a soft, pulsing light. Some shimmered with gold and silver stripes. Others sparkled with rainbow colors that shifted and changed like the northern lights. The most unusual ones appeared to be made of crystal, their surfaces reflecting tiny stars that seemed to move within the candy itself. "Alexander, look at this one," Isabella whispered, picking up a candy cane that felt warm to the touch despite the cool library air. As soon as her fingers wrapped around it, the candy cane began to hum a gentle melody, and tiny snowflakes began to fall from thin air around her. Alexander carefully lifted a crystal candy cane, and immediately the dusty old library began to transform. The ancient books glowed softly, their leather covers becoming vibrant and new. Cobwebs disappeared, and the musty smell was replaced by the fresh scent of peppermint and pine. "These must be magical," Alexander said, his voice filled with wonder. He had always been fascinated by the old stories of magic that their grandmother, Queen Evangeline, used to tell them. She often spoke of ancient artifacts hidden throughout the castle, items from the time when magic flowed freely through their kingdom. Isabella noticed an old parchment that had been in the silver box. The writing was in an elegant script that seemed to shimmer and move on the page. She read aloud. "The candy canes of winter's heart hold the power to bring joy and wonder to all who believe. But beware, for their magic must be used wisely, or the kingdom shall fall into eternal winter." The siblings exchanged excited glances. Their kingdom of Winterhaven was already known for its beautiful snow and ice, but lately something had been wrong. The snow had been falling harder than usual, and the people in the villages below had been struggling to keep warm. Some of the kingdom's magical creatures had been acting strangely, and even the castle's warm spells seemed to be weakening. "Do you think these could help?" Isabella asked, holding up her glowing candy cane. The warmth it provided felt wonderful, and she noticed that the library had become significantly cozier since they had picked up the magical treats. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. He had always been the more cautious of the two, but even he could sense that these candy canes were special. "We should tell Mother and Father about this discovery," he said. "But first, let's see what else this box contains." They carefully examined the silver box and found it had a secret compartment. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal and a delicate map drawn on what appeared to be silk. The journal belonged to their great-great-grandmother, Princess Aurora, who had lived in the castle over 100 years ago. Isabella opened the journal carefully, and the pages began to glow with the same soft light as the candy canes. The first entry spoke of a terrible curse that had once threatened their kingdom. A dark sorcerer had tried to freeze the entire realm in perpetual winter, stealing all warmth and joy from the people. According to this, Alexander read over his sister's shoulder. Princess Aurora used these very candy canes to defeat the dark magic. But she had to gather magical ingredients from different parts of the kingdom to unlock their full power. The map showed 5 different locations throughout Winterhaven. The Whispering Woods where the silver deer roamed, the crystal caves beneath the frozen falls, the Tower of Winds at the kingdom's highest peak, the Grove of Evergreens in the southern valley, and the Heart of Winter Lake at the kingdom's center. As they studied the map, Both candy canes in their hands began to pulse more brightly. Isabella felt a strange, tugging sensation, as if her candy cane was trying to pull her toward the library's large window that overlooked the kingdom. "I think they want us to begin a journey," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Isabella had always been the more adventurous of the two siblings, often getting into harmless trouble around the castle with her curious nature. Alexander looked out the window at the snow-covered landscape below. The villages looked smaller than usual under the heavy blanket of snow, and he could see that the usually bustling market squares were nearly empty. "If these candy canes really can help our people, then we have to try," he decided. Just then, they heard footsteps in the corridor outside the library. Their parents, King Edmund and Queen Catherine, were making their daily rounds through the castle. The children quickly gathered the candy canes and the journal, deciding to keep their discovery secret until they could learn more. "We'll start tomorrow," Alexander whispered as they heard their father's voice getting closer. "We'll begin with the closest location on the map." Isabella nodded eagerly, clutching her magical candy cane tightly. She could hardly wait to begin their adventure and discover what other wonders awaited them in their enchanted kingdom. As they prepared to leave the library, the candy canes dimmed slightly, but continued to emit a gentle warmth. The silver box seemed to wink at them in the lamplight, as if it approved of their decision to embark on this magical quest to save their kingdom from the growing winter curse. Little did they know that their journey would test not only their courage, but also their bond as siblings, and that the true magic of the candy canes would only be revealed when they learned to work together in ways they had never imagined. The next morning arrived crisp and clear, with fresh snow sparkling like diamonds across the castle grounds. Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella had barely slept, their minds racing with thoughts of the magical candy canes and the adventure that lay ahead. They had hidden the enchanted treats in a special pouch that Isabella had sewn from velvet fabric, ensuring the candy canes remained safe and secret. After breakfast with their parents, the siblings made their excuse about wanting to explore the castle gardens. King Edmund and Queen Catherine, though concerned about the increasing cold, agreed to let their children play outside as long as they stayed close to the castle and took their royal guard, Sir Marcus, with them. Sir Marcus was a kind man in his 30s with a graying beard and gentle brown eyes. He had been protecting the royal family for years and had grown quite fond of the two young royals. However, he had no idea that today would be unlike any other day he had spent watching over them. The children led Sir Marcus toward the Whispering Woods, a mystical forest that bordered the castle grounds. These woods were known throughout the kingdom for their silver deer, magical creatures that were said to appear only to those with pure hearts. The trees in these woods were ancient, their branches creating natural archways, and their leaves shimmering with a silver-blue light even in winter. "Your Highnesses, perhaps we should not venture too deep into the woods today," Sir Marcus suggested as they approached the tree line. "The snow is quite deep, and the paths may be difficult to navigate." Isabella smiled sweetly at their guard. "We promise to be careful, Sir Marcus. We just want to see if we can spot any of the silver deer. Our grandmother used to tell us such wonderful stories about them." Alexander nodded in agreement, though he felt nervous about keeping their true mission secret from Sir Marcus. He had always been taught that honesty was one of the most important virtues of a good ruler, but he also understood that sometimes special circumstances required special actions. As they entered the woods, the atmosphere changed dramatically. The sounds of the outside world faded away, replaced by a gentle whispering that seemed to come from the trees themselves. The snow here was softer and more luminous, and tiny lights danced between the branches like fireflies made of starlight. Isabella discreetly pulled out her candy cane, and immediately it began to glow brighter than it had in the library. The warmth spread through her hand and up her arm, and she noticed that the whispering of the trees became clearer, almost like voices speaking in a language she could almost understand. "This way," she whispered to Alexander, following the gentle, tugging sensation of her candy cane. The magical treat seemed to know exactly where they needed to go. They walked deeper into the woods, Sir Marcus following closely behind, and marveling at how the children seemed to know exactly which path to take. The trees grew more magnificent the further they went, their trunks wide enough that it would take 6 people holding hands to circle them, and their heights disappearing into the misty canopy above. After about 20 minutes of walking, they came to a clearing where the snow seemed to sparkle with extra intensity. In the center of the clearing stood a tree unlike any other. This tree was pure silver, its bark gleaming like polished metal, and its branches heavy with leaves that looked like they had been crafted from moonbeams. "Extraordinary," Sir Marcus breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. In all his years of serving the royal family, he had never seen anything quite so magnificent. Alexander pulled out his candy cane as well, and both magical treats began to pulse in unison. The silver tree responded to their presence, its leaves beginning to chime softly like tiny bells in a gentle breeze. Suddenly, from behind the silver tree, stepped the most beautiful creature any of them had ever seen. It was a deer, but its coat was the color of fresh snow, with silver markings that seemed to shift and flow across its body like liquid starlight. Its antlers were crystalline, catching and reflecting the light from the candy canes, and its eyes were the deepest blue, filled with ancient wisdom. The silver deer approached them slowly, showing no fear. It walked directly to Isabella and gently nuzzled her hand that held the candy cane. When it did, the candy cane flared with brilliant light, and Isabella heard a voice as clear as crystal bells speaking in her mind. "Young princess," the voice said, "you have found the first key to saving your kingdom. But the magic requires more than just the candy canes. It requires courage, wisdom, and the willingness to put others before yourself." Isabella gasped softly, and Alexander noticed her expression of amazement. "What is it?" he whispered. "The deer is speaking to me," she replied quietly. "It says we need to collect something from this place." The silver deer then approached Alexander, touching its nose to his candy cane as well. Alexander felt a warm sensation flow through his entire body, and he too heard the mystical voice. "Young prince," the deer continued, "your kingdom faces a danger greater than your parents know. The eternal winter that threatens your land is not natural, but the work of the ice which who dwells in the far mountains. She seeks to claim your kingdom for her own, and only the combined magic of the 5 candy cane rituals can stop her." The deer then walked to the base of the silver tree and used its antlers to dig in the snow. Hidden beneath was a small crystal vial filled with what appeared to be liquid silver that moved and swirled on its own. "Take this essence of silver starlight," the deer's voice continued in their minds. "It is the first ingredient needed to awaken the full power of your candy canes. But remember, the magic will only work if your hearts remain pure and your intentions focused on helping others." Isabella carefully picked up the crystal vial, and as soon as her fingers touched it, the liquid inside began to glow with the same light as their candy canes. She tucked it safely into their velvet pouch alongside the magical treats. Sir Marcus watched this entire exchange with growing amazement and concern. While he couldn't hear the deer's voice as the children could, he could see that something extraordinary was happening. The air around them shimmered with magic, and he felt a strange sense of purpose and destiny surrounding the young royals he had sworn to protect. "Your Highnesses," he said quietly, "I believe we are witnessing something far beyond ordinary. While I may not understand all that is occurring, I pledge to help you in whatever quest you have undertaken." Alexander and Isabella exchanged grateful looks. Having Sir Marcus's support would make their journey much easier and safer. The silver deer stepped closer to Sir Marcus and breathed gently on his forehead. Suddenly, the loyal guard found that he too could hear the creature's wise voice. "Noble guardian," the deer said, "these children carry the hope of the kingdom. Your strength and protection will be needed in the trials ahead. Trust in the magic and trust in their pure hearts." As the deer's words faded, the magnificent creature began to fade as well, becoming more and more transparent until it disappeared entirely. But before it vanished completely, it left them with one final message. Seek next the crystal caves beneath the frozen falls. There you will find a second key, but beware the ice spirits that guard it. Your bond as siblings will be tested there. The silver tree's leaves chimed once more in farewell, and then the clearing returned to its normal appearance, though the sense of magic lingered in the air around them. As they made their way back through the whispering woods, Isabella clutched the crystal vial tightly. The liquid silver inside continued to swirl and glow, and she could feel its warmth even through the crystal walls of the container. "We did it," Alexander said with quiet excitement. "We found the first ingredient." "But the deer said our bond would be tested at the crystal caves," Isabella replied, a note of worry in her voice. "What do you think that means?" Sir Marcus, still amazed by his ability to hear the silver deer's voice, walked beside them with renewed purpose. "Whatever challenges lie ahead, your highnesses, we shall face them together. Magic has chosen you for this quest, and I have seen enough today to know that you are capable of great things." As they emerged from the woods and saw Crystal Castle in the distance, the three companions knew that their adventure was only beginning. The Ice Witch's threat loomed somewhere in the mountains, and they had 4 more ingredients to collect before they could hope to save their kingdom from eternal winter. The candy canes pulsed gently in their pouch, as if encouraging them to continue their quest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today had proven that magic was real, that they were chosen for this task, and that they had the courage to face whatever lay ahead in their enchanted kingdom of Winterhaven. 2 days had passed since their encounter with the silver deer, and the weather in the kingdom had grown even more severe. Thick snow fell constantly now, and the people in the villages were beginning to struggle more seriously with the cold. King Edmund and Queen Catherine had called for emergency meetings with their advisors, trying to find solutions to help their subjects through what seemed to be an unusually harsh winter. Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella knew they had to continue their quest quickly. The second location marked on Princess Aurora's map was the Crystal Caves beneath the frozen falls, a natural wonder located about 2 hours' ride from the castle. These caves were famous throughout the kingdom for their stunning ice formations and the magical crystals that grew within them. Early in the morning, before their parents awoke, the siblings met with Sir Marcus in the castle stables. They had managed to convince him to help them reach the frozen falls by telling their parents they wanted to see the famous ice formations for a school project about the kingdom's natural wonders. "The journey will be more challenging today," Sir Marcus warned as he prepared 3 horses for the trip. "The snow is deeper, and the path to the falls can be treacherous even in good weather." Isabella patted her horse, a gentle mare named Snowbell, and checked that their velvet pouch was securely fastened to her saddle. The candy canes inside pulsed with warmth, and she could feel the crystal vial of silver starlight adding its own magical energy to their collection. Alexander mounted his horse, Thunder, a strong stallion with a black coat that stood out beautifully against the white snow. "The map shows a specific entrance to the caves," he said, consulting Princess Aurora's silk map. "It's marked with a symbol that looks like 2 crossed icicles." As they rode through the snow-covered countryside, they passed several small villages where people were huddled around larger fires than usual, and many homes had extra layers of cloth hanging over their windows to keep out the cold. The sight made both children more determined than ever to complete their quest. The frozen falls came into view after an hour and a half of steady riding. The waterfall was magnificent, a cascade of water that had been frozen mid-fall, creating fantastic ice sculptures that towered hundreds of feet into the air. The ice caught the morning sunlight and threw rainbows in every direction, making the entire area look like it was built from liquid gems. There, Isabella pointed to a section of the frozen waterfall where 2 large icicles crossed each other naturally. "That must be the entrance the map shows." They dismounted and tied their horses to some sturdy pine trees, then approached the crossed icicles carefully. As they drew near, Alexander and Isabella both felt their candy canes beginning to react, growing warmer and starting to emit their gentle glow even through the velvet pouch. Sir Marcus helped them move aside some loose stones and snow, revealing an opening in the rock face that led into the mountain. Cool air flowed out of the cave, carrying with it the scent of ice and something else, something that smelled like winter mornings and crystal clear water. "The entrance is just large enough for us to walk through," Sir Marcus observed, lighting a torch he had brought from the castle. "But we must be very careful. Cave systems can be dangerous, especially when they're covered in ice." They entered the cave slowly, Alexander leading the way with his candy cane, now glowing brightly enough to supplement Sir Marcus's torch. The walls of the cave were covered in ice crystals that reflected their light, making it seem like they were walking through a tunnel made of stars. As they went deeper into the cave system, the formations became more and more incredible. Stalactites of pure ice hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and stalagmites rose from the floor like crystal castles. The sound of their footsteps echoed strangely in the icy chamber, creating an almost musical resonance. "Look at that!" Isabella breathed in wonder, pointing to a chamber that opened up before them. The room was enormous, its ceiling disappearing into darkness above them. But what made it truly spectacular were the thousands of crystals growing from every surface. These weren't ordinary crystals, but magical formations that pulsed with their own inner light, creating a symphony of colors that danced across the ice-covered walls. In the center of the chamber was a raised platform of natural crystal, and floating above, it was a sphere of pure blue light about the size of a melon. The sphere pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and each pulse sent waves of blue light rippling across all the crystals in the chamber. "That must be what we're looking for," Alexander said, consulting the map again. According to Princess Aurora's journal, they needed to collect the heart of winter's breath from the crystal caves. But as they approached the platform, the temperature in the chamber suddenly dropped dramatically. Their breath became visible in thick clouds, and ice began forming on their clothing. From the shadows around the chamber, shapes began to emerge. These were the ice spirits the silver deer had warned them about. They looked like people made entirely of ice and snow, with glowing blue eyes and voices that sounded like wind blowing through icicles. There were 5 of them, and they moved to surround the platform protectively. "Who dares to enter our sacred chamber?" the largest ice spirit demanded, its voice echoing through the cavern like thunder. "The heart of winter's breath is not for mortal hands to touch." Isabella stepped forward, her candy cane now blazing with warm light. "We are Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella of Winterhaven," she said with as much courage as she could manage. "Our kingdom is in danger from an ice which seeks to freeze our land forever. We need the heart of winter's breath to save our people." The ice spirits looked at each other, their expressions impossible to read. The largest one spoke again. "You say you wish to save your kingdom, but how do we know you speak the truth? Anyone can claim noble intentions." Alexander joined his sister, his own candy cane glowing brightly. "Because we're willing to prove it," he said. "What test would convince you of our sincerity?" The ice spirits conferred among themselves in their strange, wind-like voices. Finally, their leader turned back to the siblings. "There's a way to test the purity of your hearts and the strength of your bond. But it will require you to face your deepest fears and trust each other completely." "We'll do it," Isabella said immediately, though Alexander looked more hesitant. The ice spirit raised its hand, and suddenly the chamber filled with a thick, swirling mist. When the mist cleared, Alexander and Isabella found themselves separated by what appeared to be a chasm of ice that stretched across the chamber. They could see each other, but they could no longer hear each other's voices. "Each of you must cross the bridge of trust." The ice spirit's voice echoed around them. "But the bridge will only appear when you both step forward at exactly the same moment, trusting completely that the other will do the same. Isabella looked across the chasm at her brother. She could see the worry in his eyes, and she knew he was thinking about all the times in the past when they had disagreed or when one of them had let the other down in small ways. This test was asking them to have complete faith in each other. Alexander stared back at his sister, his mind racing. He thought about how impulsive Isabella could be sometimes, how she often acted before thinking things through completely. But he also thought about her brave heart, her kindness, and how she had never truly failed him when it really mattered. Both siblings closed their eyes and took a deep breath. They had to trust not only in each other, but in the bond they shared as family. Isabella thought about all the times Alexander had protected her and helped her when she was scared. Alexander thought about Isabella's courage and how she always tried to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. At exactly the same moment, both children stepped forward into what appeared to be empty air above the chasm. Instantly, a bridge of solid crystal appeared beneath their feet, strong and beautiful, stretching across the gap. They opened their eyes and saw each other walking toward the center of the bridge, their candy canes glowing so brightly that the entire chamber was filled with warm, golden light. When they met in the middle of the crystal bridge, they embraced, and the ice spirits around them began to applaud with sounds like gentle snowfall. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the leader of the ice spirits declared. "Your trust in each other has shown us the purity of your hearts. Take the heart of winter's breath, and may it serve you well in your quest to save the kingdom." The floating sphere of blue light descended gently toward them, and Isabella reached out to catch it. The moment her fingers touched it, the sphere transformed into a crystal pendant shaped like a snowflake, but one that radiated warmth instead of cold. "This pendant contains the essence of winter's own breath," the ice spirit explained. "It will help your candy canes control ice and snow, turning the ice witch's own weapons against her." Sir Marcus, who had watched the entire test with amazement and pride, helped them down from the crystal platform. The ice spirits bowed respectfully to the young royals, and then faded back into the shadows of the chamber. As they made their way out of the crystal caves, Isabella wore the crystal snowflake pendant around her neck, and both children felt stronger and more confident than before. They had not only obtained the second ingredient for their quest, but they had also proven to themselves that their bond as siblings was unbreakable. "3 more locations to go," Alexander said as they reached their horses. The candy canes in their pouch were now pulsing with even more power, and both children could feel the magic growing stronger. "And 3 more tests," Isabella added, but she was smiling. After facing their fears in the crystal caves and proving their trust in each other, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Sir Marcus helped them mount their horses, his respect for the young royals growing with each step of their incredible journey. As they rode back toward the castle, snow continued to fall, but now it seemed less threatening. With each magical ingredient they collected, they were one step closer to saving their kingdom from the Ice Witch's curse. The pendant around Isabella's neck caught the afternoon light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the snow, a sign of hope in the growing winter that threatened their beloved kingdom of Winterhaven. The situation in the kingdom had become critical. 3 more days had passed since their successful quest to the Crystal Caves, and the eternal winter was growing stronger. Reports came daily from the villages of animals seeking shelter in unusual places, rivers beginning to freeze solid, and people struggling to keep their homes warm despite burning all available wood. King Edmund had ordered the castle's great furnaces to be lit continuously, and Queen Catherine had organized teams to distribute extra blankets and food to the villages. But both parents were growing increasingly worried, and they had begun to notice that their children seemed unusually focused on something they wouldn't discuss. Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella knew they were running out of time. The magical candy canes in their possession pulsed more urgently now, and the crystal vial of silver starlight and the winter's breath pendant seemed to grow more powerful each day, as if anticipating the completion of their quest. According to Princess Aurora's map, they needed to visit both the Tower of Winds at the kingdom's highest peak and the Grove of Evergreens in the southern valley. The children decided they would have to attempt both locations in a single day, a challenging prospect that would require careful planning and considerable courage. The Tower of Winds is at least 4 hours away by horse, Sir Marcus explained as they studied the map in the castle library early that morning. And the Grove of Evergreens is in the opposite direction. If we're to reach both locations and return before nightfall, we'll need to split up. Alexander looked uncomfortable with this suggestion. After their experience in the Crystal Caves, where their bond as siblings had been tested, the idea of separating seemed wrong somehow. "I don't think that's what we're supposed to do," Isabella said, echoing her brother's concerns. "The silver deer said our bond would be tested, and the ice spirits made us prove we could trust each other. I think we're meant to face these challenges together." Sir Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Then, we'll need horses capable of making very long journeys quickly. I know of only 3 such horses in the kingdom, and 2 of them belong to your parents." After much discussion, they decided to tell King Edmund and Queen Catherine about their quest. The children were nervous about revealing their secret mission, but they realized they needed their parents' help to save the kingdom. They found their parents in the throne room, discussing emergency measures with the kingdom's advisors. When the children entered with Sir Marcus, Queen Catherine immediately noticed the serious expressions on their faces. "Mother, father," Alexander began formally, "we need to tell you about something very important, something that might help save our kingdom." The children then told the complete story of their discovery of the magical candy canes, their encounters with the silver deer and the ice spirits, and their quest to collect 5 magical ingredients to defeat the ice which was causing the eternal winter. King Edmund and Queen Catherine listened with growing amazement as their children showed them the glowing candy canes, the crystal vial of silver starlight, and the winter's breath pendant. The magical artifacts were impossible to ignore or dismiss as childish imagination. "This explains so much," Queen Catherine said softly. "The unusual severity of this winter, the reports from our scouts of strange happenings in the northern mountains, the way our castle's warming spells have been weakening." King Edmund studied Princess Aurora's map and journal carefully. "Your great-great-grandmother was known to be a powerful sorceress," he told his children. "These artifacts and this quest have the feel of genuine magic about them. With their parents' blessing and the loan of the castle's 2 fastest horses, Windchaser and Stormrunner, the siblings set out with Sir Marcus for the most ambitious day of their quest yet. Their first destination was the Tower of Winds, a natural stone formation at the highest navigable peak in their kingdom. The tower was a slender spire of rock that rose from the mountaintop, like a giant's finger pointing toward the sky. It was said that the winds from all 4 directions met at this point, creating powerful air currents that could be both beautiful and dangerous. The ride up the mountain paths was treacherous, with narrow trails covered in snow and ice. But Windchaser and Stormrunner were indeed exceptional horses, sure-footed and strong, carrying them safely up paths that would have been impossible for ordinary mounts. As they climbed higher, the wind grew stronger and colder. By the time they reached the base of the Tower of Winds, the wind was howling around them with such force that they had to shout to hear each other speak. "According to the map, we need to reach the top of the tower," Alexander called out over the wind, pointing up at the stone spire that stretched impossibly high above them. Isabella looked up and saw that there were handholds carved into the rock face, ancient steps that spiraled around the tower's exterior. But climbing them in this wind would be extremely dangerous. "Your Highnesses, perhaps I should go alone," Sir Marcus suggested. "This climb is too dangerous for children." "No," Isabella said firmly, pulling out her candy cane. As soon as the magical treat was exposed to the howling wind, it began to glow more brightly than ever before, and, remarkably, the wind around them began to calm slightly. "The magic responds to us. We have to do this together." Alexander brought out his candy cane as well, and the effect was even more pronounced. A circle of calmer air formed around them, making the climb possible. The three companions began the long spiral ascent of the Tower of Winds. It took them nearly an hour to reach the top, climbing carefully from handhold to handhold while the magical candy canes protected them from the worst of the wind. At the summit of the tower, they found themselves standing on a small circular platform of smooth stone. In the center of the platform was a depression filled with what appeared to be liquid air, something that sparkled and moved like water, but was clearly made of wind itself. "The breath of the four winds," Isabella said, reading from Princess Aurora's journal. "We need to capture some of this in a special container." From their pouch, Alexander withdrew a small crystal bottle that they had found with the candy canes. As soon as he held it near the pool of liquid air, the bottle began to fill itself with the swirling, silvery substance. The moment the bottle was full, the wind around the tower began to change. Instead of the harsh, cold howling they had experienced on the way up, the wind became musical, like a vast orchestra of flutes and harps playing a beautiful melody. "The winds are celebrating," Sir Marcus observed with wonder. "It's as if they're happy to be part of your quest." With the breath of the four winds safely captured, they began the careful descent from the tower. The magical wind song followed them down, making the climb easier and filling them with energy despite the physical demands of their adventure. But their day was only half complete. They still needed to reach the grove of evergreens in the southern valley before nightfall. The ride from the Tower of Winds to the grove took them through the heart of their kingdom, and they could see clearly how the eternal winter was affecting everything. Normally, green fields were buried under deeper snow than anyone had seen in generations, and even the hardiest winter animals looked thin and struggled to find food. The grove of evergreens was a mystical place where the oldest pine and fir trees in the kingdom grew. These trees were enormous, some of them hundreds of years old, and they were said to hold the memories of the forest itself. Even in the deepest winter, the grove remained green and alive, a sanctuary of life in the frozen landscape. As they entered the grove, Isabella noticed that her winter's breath pendant was growing warmer against her chest, and both candy canes were pulsing with anticipation. The trees here were indeed magnificent, their branches so thick and full that very little snow had reached the ground beneath them. "There!" Alexander pointed toward the center of the grove, where a circle of 7 ancient evergreens grew around a small clearing. The map shows a symbol right there. In the center of the clearing, they found something unexpected. Instead of another magical artifact or mystical creature, there was a simple wooden chair, carved from what appeared to be evergreen wood, sitting beside a small, clear spring that bubbled up from the ground. "The chair of forest wisdom," Isabella read from the journal. "Whoever sits in this chair with a pure heart will hear the voice of the forest itself." Without hesitation, Isabella sat in the wooden chair. Immediately, the grove around them came alive with whispered voices, the sound of countless trees speaking in harmony. The voice of the forest was deep and warm, like the sound of wind moving through endless branches. "Young princess," the forest voice said, "you have done well in your quest. But the final ingredient cannot simply be taken. It must be given freely, as a gift from the forest to those who have proven their worthiness." Alexander watched as his sister sat perfectly still in the chair, her eyes closed and a peaceful expression on her face. The pendant around her neck glowed softly, and the candy canes in their pouch pulsed with warm light. "The gift you seek is the essence of life eternal," the forest continued. "It is the force that keeps the evergreens green through the darkest winters. The power that ensures life continues even in the harshest conditions." From a spring beside the chair, a single drop of water rose into the air, glowing with green light. It floated gently toward Isabella and settled into her outstretched palm, where it crystallized into a tiny emerald that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. "This emerald contains the essence of life eternal," the forest voice explained. "Combined with the other ingredients you have gathered, it will give your candy canes the power to defeat the ice witch and restore the natural balance to your kingdom. As Isabella stood up from the chair, all 7 ancient evergreens around the clearing began to sway gently, despite the fact that there was no wind. Their branches rustled with sounds like gentle applause, celebrating the completion of this part of the quest. For ingredients, Alexander said with excitement, as Isabella carefully placed the emerald in their pouch with the other magical items. We only need 1 more. But Sir Marcus looked concerned as he checked the position of the sun. Your Highnesses, we need to return to the castle quickly. Night is falling, and your parents will be worried. As they rode back through the darkening kingdom, Isabella felt the weight of their quest settling on her shoulders. They had only 1 more ingredient to collect, but, according to Princess Aurora's map, the final location was the heart of Winter Lake at the very center of their kingdom. This would be their most dangerous challenge yet, because the heart of Winter Lake was where the Ice Witch's power would be strongest. But they were no longer the same children who had stumbled upon a magical candy canes just a week ago. They had proven their courage, their bond as siblings, and their dedication to helping others. The candy canes pulsed warmly in their pouch. The silver starlight swirled in its crystal vial. The winter's breath pendant glowed against Isabella's chest. The bottle of Windsong hummed softly, and the Emerald of Life Eternal provided a steady, comforting heartbeat rhythm. Tomorrow, they would face the Ice Witch herself, and the fate of their kingdom would depend on everything they had learned about magic, courage, and the power of siblings who trusted each other completely. Dawn broke cold and gray over the kingdom of Winterhaven, but it was a dawn unlike any other in the children's memory. The snow had stopped falling sometime during the night, and an eerie silence had settled over the land. Even the castle seemed unusually quiet, as if the very stones were holding their breath in anticipation. Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella had barely slept. They had spent most of the night studying Princess Aurora's journal and preparing for what they knew would be their most dangerous challenge yet. The heart of Winter Lake was located at the exact center of their kingdom, a mysterious body of water that never froze, no matter how cold the weather became. According to the ancient journal, the lake was where the Ice Witch had established her stronghold, using its mystical properties to channel her power throughout the kingdom. To reach the 5th and final ingredient, they would have to confront her directly. King Edmund and Queen Catherine had insisted on accompanying their children on this final part of their quest. After witnessing the magical artifacts and hearing the full story of their adventures, both parents understood that this was no ordinary childhood game, but a genuine mission to save their kingdom. The entire royal guard will come with us, King Edmund declared as they prepared to depart. If we're to face a powerful sorceress, we'll need all the protection we can provide. But Isabella shook her head gently. Father, I don't think it works that way. The magic has been responding to Alexander, and me specifically. The silver deer, the ice spirits, the tower winds, and the forest voice all spoke directly to us. I think this is something we have to face ourselves. Sir Marcus, who had witnessed every magical encounter so far, supported the children's assessment. Your Majesty, I've seen how the magic responds to Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella. While we should certainly provide support, the actual confrontation with the Ice Witch may be something only they can handle. After much discussion, they agreed on a compromise. The royal family, along with Sir Marcus and a small group of the kingdom's best guards, would travel to the heart of Winter Lake together. But when it came time for the actual magical confrontation, the children would face it with only the protection of their candy canes and the ingredients they had collected. The journey to the center of the kingdom took them through familiar territory that now looked completely foreign under the blanket of eternal winter. The heart of Winter Lake was located in a valley that was normally green and pleasant, a popular spot for summer picnics and royal hunting parties. But as they crested the hill that overlooked the lake, they saw a sight that made everyone gasp in shock. The valley had been transformed into a winter wasteland. The trees were covered in ice, so thick they looked like crystal sculptures, and the ground was frozen solid. Strange blue lights danced in the air, and the temperature was so cold that their breath turned to ice crystals the moment it left their mouths. The heart of Winter Lake itself was perhaps the most shocking sight of all. While the lake had never frozen in living memory, it was now covered with ice that was perfectly clear and smooth as glass. But beneath the ice, they could see something moving, a swirling mass of dark blue and silver that pulsed like a giant heartbeat. "The Ice Witch," Queen Catherine whispered, her voice filled with concern for her children's safety. Standing on the frozen surface of the lake was a figure that seemed to be made of ice and shadow combined. The Ice Witch was tall and imposing, wearing a crown of icicles and robes that flowed like frozen water. Her eyes glowed with the same cold blue light as the spirits they had encountered in the crystal caves, but there was nothing kind or protective about her gaze. As the royal party approached the lake's edge, the Ice Witch raised her hands, and the temperature dropped even further. Ice began forming on their horses' manes, and frost appeared on their clothing. "So," the Ice Witch called out, her voice carrying clearly across the frozen air, "the little royal children think they can stop the eternal winter with their toy candy canes and their collection of trinkets." Alexander and Isabella dismounted from their horses and walked to the edge of the frozen lake. They could feel their candy canes responding to the Ice Witch's presence, growing warm and beginning to glow brightly enough to melt the frost that was forming on their clothes. "We're not here to fight you," Isabella called back, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "We just want to save our kingdom and our people. The eternal winter is hurting innocent families who have done nothing wrong." The Ice Witch laughed, a sound like icicles breaking. "Innocent? Your kingdom has enjoyed warmth and comfort for too long while other lands suffer in cold and darkness. It's time for Winter Haven to experience true winter, the kind that lasts forever." "But that's not natural," Alexander protested, pulling out his candy cane. The magical treat blazed with golden light that pushed back the unnatural cold around them. "Winter is supposed to be balanced by spring and summer. Everything needs time to rest, but also time to grow." "Natural," the Ice Witch screeched, her anger causing the ice on the lake to crack ominously. "You speak to me of natural when your family has lived in luxury while others freeze? I am bringing justice to this land." Isabella reached into their pouch and began pulling out the magical ingredients they had collected. The crystal vial of silver starlight began to glow. The winter's breath pendant sent out waves of warmth. The bottle of windsong created a protective barrier of musical air around them, and the emerald of life eternal pulsed with the steady rhythm of hope. "This isn't about justice," Isabella said, her voice growing stronger as the magical ingredients responded to her determination. "This is about anger and revenge. You're hurting innocent people because you've been hurt yourself." The Ice Witch's expression faltered for a moment, and the children caught a glimpse of something unexpected in her cold eyes: sadness. "You know nothing of my pain," the Ice Witch said, but her voice was less harsh now. "You know nothing of watching those you love suffer while others live in comfort." Alexander stepped onto the frozen lake, his candy cane creating a circle of warmth around his feet that prevented him from slipping on the ice. "Then tell us," he said gently. "Help us understand." For a moment, the eternal winter seemed to pause. The Ice Witch stood perfectly still, her icy robes no longer flowing, her crown of icicles catching the light from the children's magical artifacts. "I was once like you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "A princess of a northern kingdom where the winters were harsh and the summers short. Our people struggled every year to survive, while wealthy southern kingdoms like yours prospered. When I asked for help, for trade, for assistance during our worst years, I was turned away." Isabella felt tears forming in her eyes, tears that would have frozen instantly if not for the warmth of her candy cane. "That's terrible," she said sincerely. "No one should have been turned away when they needed help. My kingdom fell," the Ice Witch continued, her form seeming to become less solid, more like mist and memory. My people scattered to other lands, and I was left alone with nothing but the power to create winter. I swore that no kingdom would be allowed to remain comfortable while others suffered. Alexander held out his candy cane toward the ice witch. But creating more suffering doesn't fix the suffering that already happened, he said gently. It just means more people get hurt. The ice witch stared at the glowing candy cane, and for the first time, her expression showed uncertainty instead of anger. Isabella stepped onto the lake as well, joining her brother. We can't change what happened to your kingdom, she said, but we can change what happens now. Instead of using your power to hurt people, you could use it to help them. Help them? The ice witch asked, confusion clear in her voice. Think about it, Alexander said excitedly. You have the power to control winter weather. During droughts, you could bring snow to the mountains to ensure fresh water. During heat waves, you could provide cooling breezes. You could use your powers to help farmers know where to plant their crops. Isabella nodded enthusiastically. And Winterhaven could be the first kingdom to officially welcome you and ask for your help. We could set up trade agreements with northern kingdoms, sharing our summer harvests in exchange for winter crafts and knowledge. The ice witch looked back and forth between the two children, her form becoming more human and less supernatural with each passing moment. You would welcome someone who has tried to destroy your kingdom. Everyone deserves a second chance, Isabella said firmly, especially someone who was trying to fix an injustice, even if they went about it the wrong way. The ice witch closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were no longer glowing with cold blue light, but were the warm brown eyes of a woman who had been alone and angry for far too long. She began, then stopped. I had forgotten that there might be another way. Alexander and Isabella walked across the ice to stand directly in front of the former ice witch. What's your real name? Isabella asked gently. Elsa, the woman replied. I was Princess Elsa of the Northern Reaches before my kingdom fell. Princess Elsa, Alexander said formally. Would you like to come home with us? Our parents are right over there, and I think they'd very much like to meet you and hear your story. Elsa looked toward the edge of the lake where King Edmund and Queen Catherine waited with the royal guard. Instead of seeing judgment or fear in their faces, she saw curiosity and compassion. The eternal winter, she said suddenly. I need to stop it before it causes any more harm. Working together, the children and Elsa combined the power of the candy canes with the 5 magical ingredients. The silver starlight provided wisdom. The winter's breath gave control over ice and snow. The wind song carried their magic across the kingdom. The life eternal ensured that spring would return, and something new, something that came from Elsa herself, the healing power of forgiveness. As their combined magic spread across the kingdom, the eternal winter began to retreat. The unnatural cold lifted, the oppressive snow clouds dispersed, and the normal, gentle winter of Winterhaven returned. In the distance, they could see green appearing on the hillsides as the magical ice melted, and spring began to return to the land. The heart of Winter Lake returned to its natural state, the ice melting to reveal the clear, sweet water that had always been its true nature. The blue lights in the air transformed into gentle snowflakes that sparkled with rainbow colors before dissolving into nothing. When they returned to Crystal Castle, they brought with them not just the end of the eternal winter, but something much more valuable, a new friend and ally who would help them build bridges between kingdoms and ensure that no one would ever again have to suffer alone through hardship. The magical candy canes were placed in a place of honor in the castle, ready to be used again if ever the kingdom faced another magical threat. But, more importantly, they serve as a reminder that sometimes the greatest magic of all is the willingness to understand someone else's pain and offer them friendship instead of judgment. Princess Elsa became the kingdom's first royal weather advisor, using her powers to help farmers, travelers, and anyone who needed assistance dealing with weather-related challenges. And every year on the anniversary of their adventure, she joined Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella for a celebration where candy canes were given to every child in the kingdom, along with the story of how courage, compassion, and sibling love had saved them all. The kingdom of Winterhaven became known throughout the land, not just for its beautiful winters and magical castle, but for its wisdom in turning enemies into friends and its understanding that the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from healing the pain that makes them want to fight in the first place.